My name is Levi Lyle. I grew up on the farm here in Keota, and I've been farming for about 10 years. I farm about 250 acres, and that's corn and soybeans. That rotation is pretty set. We've been no-till all of the last 25 years since I was in about junior high. My dad went no-till, and we don't even think of that as a soil health practice. That's just regular farming. But in recent years, say the last 5 years, we've begun to use cover crops. Interestingly enough, where we're located at in southeast Iowa, in Washington County and Keota County, we're basically right on the border between those two counties where we're at here at our home. Those two counties have led the state in the amount of cover crop acres, and that's primarily due to the incentivization of NRCS programs and the work of our NRCS people to go out and seek the money for watershed programs to do cover cropping and other associated practices like building terraces and wetlands and things like that. For all the farmers in this area, that's been a real bonus, because covering the cost of doing a new practice that you're not certain of is something that is intimidating. Organic farming is an interesting aspect that I've brought into our farm. I have 40 acres of organic certified farming. That's, I suppose, maybe a fifth of all of my farming acres. A buffer strip is a practice where instead of planting your field all the way up to the fence row or the road, you leave a space. So what I did was leave 30 feet of an alfalfa mix that grew, and that program is a 3-year program in which you wouldn't grow corn on that buffer, I believe, for a decade, but you can't do anything with it for the 3-year period. As an organic farmer, that's awesome, because as you come to the end of a field with row cultivation on corn, you often run over a whole bunch of corn on the end rows. So the conservation practices that we're using with cover cropping have been interesting, because you can take that rye mat that is there all season long and still there in the fall, and you can pull it back and you can really see that underneath it is biology. The earthworms are there and very busy, and it's just incredible to see that actual presence of biology in the soil. When you roller crimp, you lay down the rye and it stays intact with the soil, and that's important because that allows the rye to terminate slowly, which is the reason it provides suppression of weeds all season long in an organic practice. Preventing the erosion, holding the soil in place is an incredible component that rye cover crop has, and so that's listed, I'm sure, as the primary purpose that farmers are using cover crops. I wanted to get into something more niche. What I decided to do was buy a roller crimper and start using it and sharing it with other farmers in the area. And what I found was that we were able to manage weeds, completely suppressing them. And in the transition of my 40 acres to organic, I had clean beans. It was a little bit unbelievable to see how the biomass was able to inhibit weeds. So this is rye biomass that we rolled down when we planted the soybeans. When I did that over 3 years ago, in that transition to organic, it was really attention gathering. Organic was the starting point of using rye cover crops to roll down and suppress weeds with a roller crimper. But what we've begun doing is using the roller crimper on our conventional acres also. We'll put 2 bushels an acre of rye on in the fall, and then we'll roll it down in the spring and just skip the pre-emergent pass with our herbicides, with the option of coming in July and still using a herbicide. And I'm a believer in the impact of having a diverse soil. So I was excited about the conservation part, but where the conversation transitions from profitability and conservation into other things that really drive me to have these kinds of practices on my farm, it kind of hands off to what I see as the way I want my family to be involved in the farm. Having my children with me in the combine or in the tractor when I'm planting in the spring is a big part of what makes farming so enjoyable. When I think about using cover crops and building conservation into our operation, I think about the resilience in the soil. The question as to whether the benefits of these practices are worth the cost is an easy one for me. we save money by putting on the cover crops. The costs that are associated with putting on the cover crops, I feel like we are generating income for young farmers who are excited to sell cover crop seed, which is an industry in agriculture that didn't exist a decade ago. So the cost benefit on my own farm stands on its own, but even if it didn't stand on its own, I can see an economic impact in our local farm economy by doing it. So it's an easy decision for me.